My best friend's uncle has coveted me for over 10 years. Every time my best friend got into trouble and used me as an excuse, she'd get off scot-free. Until later, my best friend got unexpectedly pregnant and hid at my place. Like usual, I resignedly took the blame. But I didn't expect the man who came after her to throw my best friend out the door and close in on me, step by step. His face, usually devoid of emotion, showed a crack, and his voice trembled uncontrollably. Good girl, tell me, who is the man? At 3 in the morning, I was woken by urgent knocking. Outside, lightning flashed and thunder roared. Rainy night, knocking, single woman. This looked like the scene of a crime. I jumped in fright, immediately grabbing my phone to call the police. The person outside seemed to sense my intention and shouted to stop me. It's Sarah. Your door is double locked. I can't open it. Hurry and open up. Hearing the familiar voice, I sighed in relief and got up to open the door. Sarah is my best friend. We've known each other since the first grade of elementary school, for nearly 14 years now. Are you crazy, showing up in the middle of the night? As soon as the door opened a crack, Sarah, like a slippery eel, squeezed in and slammed the door shut in one swift motion. Seeing Sarah's appearance, I stopped my scolding. She was still wearing her pajamas, with 2 different shoes on her feet. She was soaked head to toe, dripping water onto the floor. She looked like she had been scared by something, leaning against the door and gasping for breath. I quickly got out clothes and a towel. After changing into dry clothes, Sarah was still shaken, constantly glancing towards the door. This strange scene made my heart pound, and I found myself looking too. It was as if the door would be kicked open any second. I started feeling nervous too, my voice tinged with urgency. What happened? Sarah stared at me for a long time, then her mouth drooped. I'm pregnant. Preg, I was stunned, speechless, instinctively looking at Sarah's flat stomach. Even though there were only the 2 of us in the room, I still couldn't help but whisper, Michaels? Sarah nodded. I was too shocked to speak for a moment. Michael was a sponsored student of the Bow family, whose looks were perfectly to Sarah's taste, and the innate stubbornness in his bones captivated her even more. You forced it? I said with certainty. Sarah immediately retorted, No, I didn't. It was mutual consent. Seeing Sarah's looking guilty expression, I rubbed my suddenly aching head. It wasn't surprising that I thought so. Their relationship was established solely because Sarah used her status to coerce him, and he had a mother in the hospital. Does Michael know? Never mind if he knows or not. Sarah grabbed my hands abruptly, her expression twisted. James already knows. Hearing that, I couldn't control my volume and gasped loudly. How could you let him find out? James is Sarah's Uncle James, the head of the Parker Industries, a ruthless man of few words. Sarah's parents died in a car accident when she was 5. At that time, James was only 13, and he fought for the family fortune against relatives who were like wolves and tigers. In just a few years, James drove those people out and took full control of the Parker Industries. He was very strict with this niece. His original intention was to raise Sarah to be a well-mannered heiress, gentle and elegant, just like her name suggested. However, things backfired, and Sarah developed in the opposite direction. Disrespecting elders, smoking and fighting, skipping classes and racing cars were commonplace for Sarah. Those weren't major incidents, hitting her hand, as punishment, or grounding, and the matter was considered resolved. James was a force to be reckoned within the business world, but powerless to control when it came to raising a child. Later, he with resignation only made 2 demands of Sarah: 1, not to use power to oppress others, 2, not to cause a death. Sarah was truly her uncle's bane. She didn't follow a single one. I gently patted Sarah's shoulder and said calmly, You're going to get killed. Sarah clearly knew this consequence, but hearing me say it out loud scared her into tears. James clearly said he was going on a 2-month business trip, and he's always very punctual. Who knew he'd come back tonight and just happened to see my pregnancy test results? Sob, sob, sob. Crying, Sarah suddenly grabbed me tightly, as if I were her last straw. Rachel, you're the only one who can help me now. I was willing but unable. Me? How can I help you? It's not like I'm the one who's pregnant. At this, silence fell around us. My heart sank as I met Sarah's hopeful gaze. You're not serious. Please, please, just hide it for a few days, at least get through tonight. James is furious right now. He likes you the most. He definitely won't get angry at you. Sarah was telling the truth. James did like me, a fondness a senior has for a junior. I was well behaved and sensible, with excellent grades, the perfect niece in James's eyes. Especially compared to Sarah, James liked me even more. Sarah also realized this. Every time she got into trouble, she would use me as an excuse. Seeing it was me, James wouldn't get angry. Seeing I was still hesitating, Sarah cried harder, Rachel, James won't beat you to death, but he'll definitely beat me to death. Sob, sob, sob. Knock, knock, knock. As we were talking, the front door was knocked on again. A few seconds later, a deep male voice came through. It's James. Just then, a flash of lightning lit up the sky outside. I swallowed and exchanged fearful glances with Sarah. Sarah, who was fearless in front of outsiders, was only afraid of her Uncle James. That made me afraid too. Although James had never lost his temper with me and his attitude had even been gentle. But every time I saw him, I felt a strange sense of tension. Seeing no movement inside, James raised his hand to knock again. Finally, under Sarah's pleading eyes, I resignedly nodded and slowly got up to open the door. The cold, rain-laden wind blew in. The man's nearly 6'3" frame blocked the doorway, the pressure washing over me like a tide. I unconsciously held my breath and stepped back 2 steps, on Uncle James. James had deep-set brows, which always gave him an air of authority without needing to express anger. Now his lips were pressed thin, and under the dim light, this feeling was even stronger. James seemed to realize he had scared me, and a smile appeared on his face. Rachel, is Sarah inside? My heart was a mess, and I instinctively said, she's not here. James chuckled at that, his gaze dropping. The winding water trail on the floor easily exposed my lie. Lying isn't what good girls do. My heart constricted, and my hand resting against the door fell weakly. May I come in? As soon as James finished speaking, he walked in on his own, opened the shoe cabinet, and changed into slippers. He didn't give me a chance to answer at all. Just as Sarah and I nicknamed him, the polite pervert. Like a serial killer on TV asking, "May I kill you?" just before the act. James's relaxed posture was as if he were in his own house. I followed him awkwardly, looking like the guest. James walked straight to the sofa and sat down, not even giving Sarah a glance. Sarah, however, reacted strongly, jumping up and hiding behind me. James took out a wrinkled piece of paper, placed it on the table, then leaned back on the sofa, rubbing his temples. I've been reading a lot of words lately, and I suddenly seem to have forgotten how to read. Sarah, please tell me, what does intrauterine pregnancy mean? James spoke like a student humbly asking for instruction, even smiling. James was a person whose emotions rarely showed on his face. Even at a time like this, he was composed, making it impossible to tell how angry he was. It was like the calm before the storm. If someone had just met James, they would surely think he was asking about something insignificant. Sarah grabbed my hand and gently shook it. That. I spoke suddenly, that's mine. Another clap of thunder in the sky. James's smile gradually froze, his gaze shifting from Sarah to my face. What did you say? James sounded like he hadn't heard clearly. Sarah's grip on my hand tightened. I steeled myself and closed my eyes. I said, Sarah isn't pregnant, I am. Afraid the thunder would cover my voice again, I spoke very loudly this time. James's face instantly darkened. But soon, the man's expression returned to normal. As if the previous moment was just an illusion. James stared straight into my eyes. This matter isn't small. Are you covering for her again? James wasn't stupid, of course, he knew Sarah had pushed her past troubles onto me. Precisely because this matter was very serious, I had to cover for her even more. At least I had to get James through tonight. You misunderstood. This time, it really is me. This is indeed not a small matter. Sarah also wanted to keep my secret, but she accidentally got discovered by you and panicked, which is why she ran to my place. I met his gaze with frankness. Just like adults will unconditionally trust a good child. James believed at least 90%. He lowered his eyes to the report on the table, lost in thought. After a long while, the man spoke, Sarah, go home. Sarah and I exchanged glances. Did the matter just pass? Unlike Sarah, who breathed a sigh of relief, I felt a slight pang of bitterness. He would be angry if something happened to Sarah, but if it was me, he wouldn't care as much. I'm not going back. Rachel is in a special situation right now. I'll stay and keep her company. You go back by yourself. Her life was saved, and a cunning smile appeared on Sarah's face. Unexpectedly, the sitting man suddenly stood up at her words, grabbed Sarah with one hand, and rushed out the door. They left in a hurry, without even changing their shoes. Just as I was wondering if I should chase after them, the front door was suddenly flung open. Bang! The door slammed shut heavily. Seeing James, who had returned, I was momentarily stunned and said, Your shoes are still here. James didn't say a word. A crack appeared on his face, which was usually devoid of emotion, as he strode towards me, closing in. I instinctively recoiled, backing up repeatedly until my waist hit the cabinet. James placed his hands on either side of me, his leg pressed forcefully between my knees. I had nowhere to escape. Uncle James, what are you doing? The man's presence squeezed all the air around me. I could barely breathe normally. Something was wrong. Very wrong. This had completely exceeded the safe distance between an elder and a junior. I cowered, trying my best not to touch James, unsure where to look. Whose? It took me a few seconds to realize James was asking about the baby. He seemed angry, because of me. Realizing this, amidst my panic, I felt a strange sense of delight. But I couldn't answer the man's question. If I had a boyfriend, I could give a name, but the key point was, I had never been in a relationship. You don't know him, I said stiffly. James stepped back a few centimeters. But we were still too close. A few centimeters was just a drop in the bucket. Good girl. James suddenly reached out, his warm palm gently stroking my hair. My heart trembled. Before, when I got good grades or won awards, James would do this, stroking my hair and saying words of praise. Good girl, you've always been good, tell me, who's the man, okay? Although James was trying to calm down, his voice still trembled slightly. I slowly looked up, meeting James's gentle and indulgent gaze. It was as if he would tolerate all my mistakes. If I ignored the way he was forcefully pinning me, I might have been tricked into telling the truth. But how could I invent a man out of thin air? I lowered my head again and didn't speak. Little did I know, my silence, in the man's eyes, meant I was covering for that wild man. James's face changed abruptly. The fake smile finally disappeared, leaving only coldness in his eyes. 3 weeks pregnant. I was only gone for a month, Rachel. He had been watching the girl for so many years, and he didn't expect her to be snatched away after just a month. I was also surprised by the timing, secretly cursing Sarah for her audacity. Get rid of it. A commanding order came from above my head. My mind went blank for a moment, and I suddenly understood why Sarah dared to challenge James, even though he was so intimidating. That tone was truly annoying to listen to. Besides, James was Sarah's Uncle James, not mine. Thinking this, I didn't know where the emotion came from. Why? What right do you have to order me? James stared at me for a moment, then chuckled. In a flash, the man gripped my chin with one hand and lowered his head, pressing his lips against mine without asking. I widened my eyes, my hands pinned above my head, unable to move. James's kiss was filled with violent emotion, without any tenderness, as urgent and heavy as the storm outside the window. The man's strength was great. I struggled for a long time but couldn't break free. The more fiercely I struggled, the stronger his grip became. Since force didn't work, I tried softness. I tentatively responded a little. James immediately noticed and softened his movements considerably. I found my chance, concentrating strength in my teeth, and bit down hard. The metallic taste of blood spread. James instinctively released my hands. I pushed him with all my might. The moment James was pushed away, my palms simultaneously swung out. Slap! The world fell briefly silent. I covered my sore lips. Are you crazy? She's your niece, and I'm her friend. James's head was turned by the blow. A bright red imprint instantly appeared on his cheek. I felt a little guilty. I could tell I had used a lot of force. James froze, staring blankly. He raised a hand to touch his slapped cheek, then his bleeding lip, in disbelief. It wasn't until he saw the blood on his fingertips that James raised an eyebrow and smiled. He really was crazy, smiling even after being hit. So this is wrong. James chuckled softly, his distinct black and white eyes fixed on me, and he said word by word, "What's wrong? Illegal? Or incest?" The man's husky voice, laced with amusement, spoke those words. My face, which had just calmed down, flushed rapidly again. I never knew James could be so shameless. I ran into the bedroom and locked the door. My heart pounded wildly, as if it would burst my eardrums at any moment. It wasn't until I heard the sound of the outer door closing that my breathing gradually returned to normal. I cautiously opened the bedroom door. James was gone. Before leaving, he didn't forget to wipe the water off the floor. I opened my phone. Sarah had sent messages an hour ago. Sarah, James had the driver take me back and then came back to find you. Sarah, did he give you trouble? I immediately thought of the scene that had made my face red. James's behavior tonight was very strange. But what was even stranger as me, I wasn't repulsed by his intimate contact. I didn't know how to tell Sarah. After all, I had been calling James Uncle James for 14 years, just like her. Just as I was agonizing over whether to tell her, Sarah sent another message. Sarah, tomorrow night is Mrs. Wilson's 80th birthday. James must have come back suddenly for this. I was going tomorrow night too. I wasn't ready to see him so soon. And more importantly, tomorrow Mr. and Mrs. Smith were taking me to meet someone, preparing for a strategic marriage. James wouldn't think I did it on purpose, would he? I could only take things as they came and try to avoid him. Sarah kept complaining about James, completely unaware that she was the one who had done wrong. Me, how long are we going to keep lying to him? The reply came instantly. Sarah, my flight is at 7:30 tomorrow night. I'm eloping with the baby's father. You can just tell him at the banquet tomorrow night, but to be safe, wait until I've boarded before you confess. This kindness is hard to repay. Sarah, will surely repay you someday. Sarah said it so lightly, but I had a bad feeling. in the chauffeured car on the way to the birthday banquet. I sat silently while Mom roughly checked my makeup. I looked fine in the mirror, but the woman was still unsatisfied. I told you to hang out with Sarah and hook up with a man from that social tier to marry into their family. But you just messed around. In the end, I have to rely on your father and me. I pressed my lips together tightly, habitually saying sorry. My family was new money, commonly known as nouveau riche. In this circle, we were the bottom tier. The relationship between Sarah and me was genuine, untainted by any interests. I didn't want these things to affect our friendship. Upon arrival, we offered birthday wishes to the host. From the moment I entered, I scanned his surroundings. Thankfully, James hadn't arrived yet. Mr. and Mrs. Smith led me towards a gentleman and a lady dressed in luxurious clothes. My face turned pale when I saw who they were. "This is Rachel? She's very pretty." "Oh, no, your son is the handsome one." They exchanged pleasantries. I looked at my parents in disbelief. I knew them. The man's last name was Smith. I had expected them to use me for a strategic marriage for profit, but I hadn't expected them to disregard my well-being so completely. This couple's son was notoriously promiscuous, interested in both men and women, and had even been involved in some lawsuits. Good families with daughters avoided them like the plague, but my parents were eagerly pursuing them. "Rachel, quickly offer Mr. and Mrs. Smith a drink." I didn't move. My mother pinched my arm and warned quietly, "Rachel Smith." I tightened my grip on the wine glass but still didn't move, as if making a last act of helpless resistance. Just then, a hand suddenly reached out from the side and took my wine glass. "Rachel is still young. She doesn't drink. I'll do it for her." James tilted his head back and drank it in one gulp, casually placing the empty wine glass on a ashtray. Everyone was stunned. When did you arrive?" "Your face." I gasped in surprise, covering my slightly parted mouth. The slap mark on James's face was distinct, and the wound on his lip was still scabbed over. Both were in obvious places, clearly indicating a woman had done it. His expression was open and frank, as if he was completely unaware of how many people were looking and whispering. James did this on purpose. He couldn't hide his lip, but he could definitely hide the red mark. As soon as James appeared, Mr. and Mrs. Smith immediately dropped their condescending attitude towards us and put on a fawning face. "Mr. Bo's girlfriend is really unique. May I ask which family's daughter she is?" James hadn't had any gossip or scandals in years, so his appearance like this today certainly aroused a lot of curiosity. "Yes, and Rachel and Sarah are such good friends. She'll be Aunt Rachel then, won't she?" My mother followed up, simultaneously nudging my arm. Her intention was clear. She wanted me to get on good terms with James. They used to tell me to use Sarah to bring up company business to James. I never did. At least before last night, James was a kind elder to me, and I didn't want him to think I had ulterior motives. "Aunt Rachel." James repeated the 3 words. "Do you like it?" James suddenly asked me, and several people looked at me in unison. I wasn't used to being stared at like this, and I hadn't eaten much in the morning or at noon. My stomach was a little uncomfortable now. James immediately noticed, glancing down at my stomach. "Feel like throwing up?" I didn't notice his gaze and answered honestly, "A little." I looked at the marks on James's face, then saw the increasing number of people around us. I hesitated for a few seconds. "Could you take me somewhere to rest?" "Okay." For a VIP like James, the host naturally prepared a special restroom, complete with snacks. My stomach was bothering me badly, so I helped myself to a few pieces. Halfway through eating, I felt an intense gaze. James was sitting on the farthest sofa, his eyes following me. To be precise, they were following my stomach. It was 6 o'clock now, only an hour and a half until I could tell the truth. Thank you for helping me out just now. I slightly turned my body, trying to block his view. Is he here today? James asked. I knew he was asking about the baby's father and answered stiffly, no. Hearing this answer, James scoffed. He had searched all day and couldn't find a single clue. No need to think, it must have been his niece's doing. This Sarah, she had perfected the skill of defending against him, favoring outsiders over family. That person dumped the whole mess on you, and you still like him? James frowned, his tone filled with displeasure. Before, I would have thought he was concerned. But after last night, James seemed unwilling to pretend anymore, openly looking at me with the gaze a man reserves for a woman. My palms were slightly sweaty. I wasn't used to it. I didn't know how to answer that question. Silence filled the room, only the sound of our faint breathing could be heard. The room was very well soundproofed. No outside noise could get in. It was too quiet, and I felt like I was sitting on pins and needles. I suddenly felt that staying with James was worse than going out and talking to those people. I'm rested. I'm going out. Before I finished speaking, the man sitting suddenly stood up and walked quickly towards me. The scene overlapped with last night. I reflexively raised my hands and covered my mouth tightly. But James just crouched in front of me, the oppressive feeling he usually exuded suddenly disappearing. I'm sorry, Rachel. What happened yesterday was my fault. I shouldn't have kissed you without your permission. I apologize. Can Rachel forgive me? My heart skipped a beat. Someone like James only ever looked down on others. And now he was kneeling on one knee, looking up at me. His dark, deep eyes reflected my image. To be honest, seeing James humble himself, while I was shocked, I was also undeniably touched. It was no big deal. I almost said what I was thinking, but quickly closed my mouth and changed it to, it's fine as long as you know you were wrong. After saying that, I even nodded assertively. James's eyes curved, as gentle as before. I couldn't help but be momentarily stunned, relaxing my posture and resting my hands on my lap. Whether it's the Smiths today or the Lee family tomorrow, if you don't want to, you don't have to. Rachel, you have my support. James's light words were like a tranquilizer, sweeping away the worries I'd had about the strategic marriage these past few days. As he spoke, James's fingertip lightly touched the back of my hand. Seeing I didn't move it away, his large hand covered mine directly, holding it tightly. Actually, the moment he touched my hand, my mind was a mess, with only his words "you have my support" echoing. This wasn't the first time James had said that. When Sarah wasn't around and I was bullied, and the other party was rich and powerful, Mr. and Mrs. Smith would tell me on the phone to apologize regardless of right or wrong. It was always him who came to the school in the end. When I didn't get the grades Mr. and Mrs. Smith demanded and hid outside, afraid to go home, he was the one who found me, tear-stained. When we got home, Mr. and Mrs. Smith didn't mention a word of it. Even when I no longer wanted to learn dance as my parents wished and wanted to choose my favorite subject, law. Sensing my distraction, James squeezed my palm. Only a man who can protect you is worth liking. James had been using a slow, subtle approach, but Mr. and Mrs. Smith's sudden arrangement for a strategic marriage and my unexpected pregnancy completely disrupted his plan. He knew he couldn't wait any longer and had to directly and forcefully enter my emotional world. So, Rachel. My hand was brought by James, intimately close to his cheek. I saw the man turn his head slightly, press a kiss to my palm, and then look into my eyes and say, "Look at me." The burning heat spread from my palm throughout my body. Without looking in a mirror, I knew how red my face was right now. I swallowed. Ding, my phone ringing. I immediately pulled back my hand from James's grip and took my phone out of my bag. It was Sarah. I walked to the corner and answered. Hello? James clicked his tongue in annoyance. He must have owed Sarah a lot in his past life. He should have just packed her up and sent her abroad back then, out of sight, out of mind. James was truly a cunning man who only knew how to lure people. If it weren't for this phone call, I would have been tricked into agreeing just now. Shouldn't you be boarding right now? Did you tell James? Sarah and I spoke at the same time. I answered first, not yet. That's good. Sarah's hanging heart finally dropped. My heart rose, and I glanced back at James guiltily. James was sitting on the sofa, eyes closed, rubbing his temples with one hand. I turned back to the call. What's going on? I had a little situation over here. Spit it out. The baby's dad won't come with me. My vision went dark. So, they didn't elope successfully. Rachel, don't worry. Just give me 3 more days. I'll definitely sort out that Michael kid. What could I do but agree? Okay. But I felt something was off. Why was Sarah's tone so calm? Based on my many years of knowing her, Sarah should be furious, enraged, and cursing right now. What did you do to Michael? The words slipped out. The person on the other end of the phone, seeing I had exposed her, stopped pretending and revealed her true nature. What could I do? That man absolutely refused. He was so annoying. So, I knocked him out and tied him up, you know. Towards the end, Sarah's voice got quieter, and she added, I hit him a bit hard, he's still not awake. I sighed deeply. What do we do now? Sarah chuckled twice. Hee hee, I'm planning to butter up my Aunt Rachel. Pillow talk is the most useful. I choked on my saliva and coughed. You knew? Sarah burst out laughing. Ha ha, with James's face, it's hard not to know. Ha 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 ha. I bit my lower lip and whispered, then, do you approve? Saw. Ra was the family I chose. Her opinion was the most important. I 10 fingers and 10 toes approve. At first, I was worried Sarah would be unhappy, but hearing that, I pursed my lips and smiled. If you ask me, when an older man like James, who has never been in a relationship, falls hard when in love, it's unstoppable. Whatever Aunt Rachel says, James will definitely agree. Sarah kept saying Aunt Rachel, which made me blush. Just as I was about to tell her to call me by my name instead. Oh, right, Rachel, Sarah said. I had another bad feeling. I can't show my face right now. Can you help me find out which woman was so blind as to fall for James? Sarah felt it was better to avoid James for a while to avoid being found out. So, after all that talk, Sarah and I weren't on the same page. I wanted to cry. How was I supposed to bring that up now? Rachel, are you ready? James was afraid that if he waited any longer, he wouldn't be able to resist sending Sarah abroad. Before I could react, I heard the beep 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 of the call being disconnected. Sarah hung up without even saying goodbye, scared by the sound of James's voice. The awkward atmosphere was broken. I walked up to James a little awkwardly and responded to his earlier words, I need to think about it. My mind was a mess right now. James nodded in agreement, you have plenty of time to think, but... James slightly raised his chin, his gaze dropping to my stomach again. Let's get a checkup first. I've already arranged the hospital. I could have told him today, but it seemed I still couldn't. My best friend or a man? I chose the former without hesitation. Wait a few more days. This sentence affected James. His brow furrowed. Wait for what? Who is he? There are no men around you I don't know. His words reminded me. It seemed the man in front of me knew too much about every aspect of my life. Before, I saw him as an elder, but the situation was different now. James. It was the first time I had called him by his name. James was surprised. I said, word by word, I have my privacy. Please don't interfere too much. James laughed in anger. He opened his mouth several times, finally squeezing out a "I understand" from his throat. After that day, Mr. and Mrs. Smith never brought up the strategic marriage again. Their attitude towards me was warmer than ever before, even slightly cautious. I vaguely guessed what James had said. He probably meant he would be my marriage partner. Thinking about it carefully, if my husband was James, it seemed not bad. However, these past few days, my focus had been entirely on Sarah. I had no time to think about myself. On the afternoon of the third day, as Sarah had promised, she came to me with a worried face. Michael still hasn't budged? Sarah nodded. To be honest, I didn't approve of Sarah's solution, but she wouldn't easily change her mind once she decided something. Then, what are you two thinking about the baby? Sarah glanced at me and didn't speak. After years of unspoken understanding, I immediately knew what she meant. You haven't told him yet, have you? Sarah, this is not a small matter. Sarah sighed. It's not like I haven't had a chance to bring it up. Rachel, help me out. He hasn't eaten for days. I took the light soup Sarah had prepared and went to the house where she was hiding Michael. Hearing the bedroom door open, Michael, sitting on the floor beside the bed, was pale and motionless, as if nothing could stir him in the least. This relationship, from the beginning, was Sarah forcing him. If I didn't know Sarah, I would strongly condemn her actions. I unlocked the restraints. Michael whispered a thank you, then staggered to his feet and left. Have something to eat before you go. The man didn't listen and continued walk. Out. Sarah is pregnant. The person who had reached the door stopped. I felt it was necessary to maintain Sarah's reputation, which she didn't have at all. This time, it's not a threat. She wanted to elope with you. Looking at Michael eating soup with a spoon at the table, I sent a relieved emoji to Sarah. Just as I pressed send, the front door was suddenly opened. Why are you here? It was James. James caught sight of Michael out of the corner of his eye and went straight over and punched him. What are you doing? Sarah and I shouted in unison, each pulling one person back. Sarah had been sitting in the car and saw her Uncle James coming from afar. She rushed over and witnessed the scene. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. James smiled at me and apologized, then said to Michael on the floor, I really can't stand a wimp who pushes everything onto a woman. Don't talk nonsense. I did it all by myself. Sarah immediately retorted when she heard him, then realized the situation after shouting and looked guilty. I watched from the side, my eyelids twitching. After hiding it for so long, she confessed everything in one sentence. James looked at me, then glanced at Sarah, and his mind instantly put it together. No wonder he couldn't find anything. That report really was his good niece's. For a moment, he didn't know whether to be angry or just plain angry. James looked at me, said nothing, and turned to face Sarah. You really have some nerve. Sarah was able to adapt quickly and immediately knelt down. I was wrong. I shouldn't have hidden it from you. Is that all you were wrong about? I had another bad feeling. Sure enough, Sarah softly mumbled, love is not a crime. This was like adding fuel to the fire. James immediately looked for something handy, searching while saying, Today, I must discipline you properly on behalf of your parents. Michael, who had been observing all this, subconsciously blocked Sarah when he saw this. I saw Sarah's face, which had just been scared, turn shy as she hid behind Michael. Me? James finally found a feather duster. Afraid that the angry man wouldn't be able to control his strength, I stopped James and persuaded him, don't be impulsive. Mind your own business. James gently pushed me away. I took his hands in mine. Just calm down first, okay? I hadn't held much hope, but unexpectedly, James actually calmed down. I suddenly felt that Sarah was quite similar to James in some ways. For example, favoring outsiders over family. Another example, love struck. I had temporarily stabilized things on my side, but Sarah started causing trouble again. Sarah's thick-skinned mind, for the first time, connected James's current behavior to the events of the past few days and guessed the truth herself. Sarah rushed out, pulled me and James apart, protecting me like a mother hen protects her chicks. At this moment, anger was at its peak. "You shameless old man!" Sarah pointed at James's nose and cursed, while also comforting me. "Rachel, don't be afraid. No matter what despicable means this old man used to threaten you, as long as I, Sarah, am here, he won't succeed. I'm telling you, James, even though I can't beat you now, you just wait. When you're old, I'll pull out your oxygen tank." Michael couldn't help but laugh. "James." The interrogation eventually turned into a best friends late-night chat. I recounted everything that had happened from beginning to end and repeatedly assured Sarah that James had not threatened me. Sarah was unusually deep in thought. After a long while, she asked, then, "Rachel, do you like James?" "Well, I can't really say for sure." I shyly lowered my head, "but I do think I want to marry him." Sarah lay back in bed with peace of mind and concluded, "Then you like him." I blushed and lay down next to her. The person beside me spoke again. "I even told James to recognize you as his godniece back then." No wonder he didn't agree. I remember that was in high school. Old pervert. Thinking of something, Sarah suddenly changed her expression and cursed. I couldn't help but tease, "And you have the nerve to call others a pervert." Sarah laughed a few heartless laughs and then suddenly stopped. Not only did I make a mistake, I also cursed James out. Sarah jumped up, speaking incoherently and quickly, "I'm running away now. Michael, you watch him for me. I'll come pick you up after I've hidden well." "No need," I said. Sarah stopped her attempt to escape and looked at me in confusion. I cleared my throat and deliberately twirled the hair on my shoulder. "Sarah, hurry and butter me up. Maybe I'll use some pillow talk with your Uncle James." Sarah was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter. Violence cannot solve problems. In the study, I spoke seriously to James for a long time, while Sarah hid behind me, nodding repeatedly. Sarah was wrong, but are you completely blameless? You're so busy with work. If you usually paid more attention, learned more, managed her more. Hey, Sarah stopped me and reminded softly, "You don't have to say that part." I paused, then continued, "Anyway, my suggestion is to let the two of them talk things over themselves first, and then discuss it later. What do you think?" James listened to the entire speech, then sighed softly, giving me a helpless smile. "I think dealing with someone like Sarah sometimes really does require a little violence." I smiled and shook my head, indicating disagreement. James's gaze swept over Sarah, who was giggling. His expression immediately turned cold, and his tone was displeased. "You certainly know how to find support. Go out and talk it over." "Okay." Sarah quickly rolled out the door. After Sarah left, James turned his back to me and said, "You always side with Sarah." I could hear the strong dissatisfaction in his words. "You're not jealous about that, are you?" "No, I have no right." His words sounded pitiful. I walked in front of James and looked up at him. James turned his head away from me. I took his hand and rubbed it against my face. James's body stiffened. He looked at me. "Didn't you say that day that only a man who can protect me is worth liking?" "James, I'm looking at you now. I've only ever looked at you." Epilogue: Sarah eventually went to the hospital. She and Michael hadn't truly grown up yet. They couldn't even take care of themselves, let alone a new life that could laugh, cry, and think. Sarah was sad for a few days. Then she became happy again, because Michael came to take care of her voluntarily, doing everything himself. This was the first time Sarah hadn't threatened him.